The best gift would be if the old woman just disappeared already. That's what my son said. On his 28th birthday, in front of a dozen friends. About me, I was standing at the patio door, carrying his favorite chocolate cake, 3 layers, hand-mixed ganache, golden candles waiting to be lit, and the wrapped box holding his grandfather's vintage watch. I didn't even blink at first. I thought maybe I'd misheard. But then he laughed. Seriously, it's like she's always hovering, like a ghost, just vacuuming and judging, someone snorted. Is she even paying rent? She owns the house, another voice replied. Or at least she acts like it. And Nathan, the boy I carried for 42 hours of labor, the man I housed, fed, defended, and mourned with after his father died. He laughed and said, "She's just a guilt trip on legs." I stood there for a long moment, 1 foot over the threshold of the life I thought I still had. The cake was warm in my hands, the frosting barely holding against the August heat. I'd piped his name on it this morning while humming the lullaby I used to sing when he had night terrors. My hands didn't shake. "Not yet," Brielle's voice chimed in. "When's she finally moving out, anyway?" Nathan replied, "God, soon, I hope. She's not exactly in demand on the rental market." Laughter. Even louder this time. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, but something in me shifted. A snapping sound I didn't hear so much as feel. Something invisible but final. I backed away from the door like it had burned me. Silent, controlled, unseen. I placed the cake on the kitchen counter without smudging the frosting. The gift beside it looked absurd now, wrapped in the same gold ribbon I'd used for his high school graduation. I'd planned to give it to him after dinner, with a speech about how proud his father would have been. Now I just stared at it. I don't know what hurt more, his words or the ease with which he said them. The way he spoke like I wasn't a person, but an obstacle, a nuisance, furniture. I used to tell myself he was just lost, grieving, that he'd come back to himself eventually. But that wasn't grief I heard out there. That was contempt, mockery, and it wasn't new. It was practiced. The funny thing is, I didn't even feel angry yet. What I felt was clarity, the kind that only comes after you've been pretending not to see for too long. I glanced at the clock. 3:57 p.m. The guests would be full of cheap beer and borrowed confidence for at least another hour. They had no idea they were celebrating under a roof I still legally owned, a roof I could sell out from under them with one notarized signature. I walked to the drawer where I kept my spare keys, pulled them out, and tucked them into my cardigan. Then I opened the cupboard, took out a single match, and laid it beside the cake. 1 match, 1 hour. That was all I needed. If the best gift I could give him was my disappearance, well, I was about to give my son exactly what he asked for, just not in the way he expected. Then I started to remember. A week before his birthday, I'd come home early from the pharmacy. The headache hadn't let up for days, and I didn't want to deal with the crowded waiting room. So I picked up my refill and came straight back. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I wasn't even trying to be quiet. But as I walked up the front steps, I heard her voice through the open window. "Brielle, so when is she moving out?" She said it like she was asking about the weather. Like I wasn't a person, like I wasn't sitting on the deed to the house they were living in rent-free. Nathan laughed. Not a nervous laugh. A confident one. "Soon," he said. "I'm working on it." I didn't move. I stood there, frozen on the porch, heart thudding in my ears. I thought maybe she meant someday. A casual, harmless question. Maybe she was just being thoughtless. But now, days later, those words kept echoing in my mind, and they felt different. When is she moving out? I started remembering things I'd ignored. The locked drawer in the study. The one he said had tax documents and was easier if I didn't go through it because it's just clutter. The way Brielle always stopped talking when I walked into a room, plastering on a tight little smile. The text messages I'd seen flash across Nathan's screen that he'd flipped over too fast. A joke here, a jab there. She's still kicking. Old ladies like a roach. Never dies. They didn't say these things in anger. No, it was worse than that. They said them in amusement. Casual cruelty, the kind of cruelty that comes from feeling untouchable. I started taking mental notes. Every interaction, every whisper, every sideways glance. Brielle was sweet as sugar to my face. "Oh, Maureen, I love what you've done with the garden." Except I hadn't touched the garden in weeks. She knew that. She was just keeping me soft, docile, foolish. She kissed my cheek when she left, but she didn't know I saw her wipe it off on her sleeve as she walked down the steps. The next morning, I made myself coffee and sat in my favorite chair. It had belonged to my mother before me. She raised 5 kids in it, drank black coffee, buried a husband, and still outlived everyone who underestimated her. I asked myself the question no mother wants to face. What if your child is the villain in your life story? And I answered it. Then you stop playing the victim in theirs. I started looking differently, listening harder, and what I saw wasn't a young couple struggling to find independence. It was 2 opportunists circling the same vulnerable target, me. They assumed I wouldn't fight, that I wouldn't dig, that I wouldn't notice, but that was their first mistake. And they'd already made too many. They didn't see the quiet calculation building in my silence. They didn't see me watching them from the hallway mirror when they thought I was asleep. They didn't see what was coming. Brielle thought she had a partner in my son. And maybe she did. But what neither of them realized, what they never bothered to ask, was how much I had protected him from himself over the years, from debt collectors, from his own foolishness, from consequences. But I wasn't going to do that anymore. Not for him, not for her, and not for anyone who thought I didn't know exactly what was going on inside my own house. Let them think I'm the harmless one, the ghost with a vacuum cleaner. They'd find out soon enough. This ghost still owned the damn house. Betrayal doesn't always show up in loud, obvious ways. Sometimes it creeps in under door frames, hiding in the corners of drawers you no longer open. And when you finally start looking, really looking, it's everywhere. I started with the little things. First, my name had disappeared from the Wi-Fi account. It had always said Maureen Carter. I remember because I'd opened it myself when we moved in after Harold passed. Suddenly, it was under Nathan Carter. No notice, no explanation. Then I realized my Netflix profile was gone, the one I used to watch old black and white films. It had been replaced with one labeled guest, as if I were just passing through. My bedroom door, always closed when I left the house, was sometimes open when I returned. At first, I told myself it was just my memory. Maybe I'd left it ajar. Maybe a breeze caught it. But the house was still, the windows were shut, and my perfume bottle had moved 3 inches to the left. The straw that snapped the illusion was a bank envelope. I found it stuffed under the recycling, my name on the address line. But when I opened it, I saw a joint account statement, one I never signed up for. It listed both of our names, mine and Nathan's, but I hadn't authorized anything like that. And Nathan didn't have a job, not a real one, not in over a year. So how was money flowing in and out of an account with my name on it? I remember standing there at the sink, clutching that envelope, staring out the window as Brielle laughed at something on her phone. She was curled up in my patio chair, like she owned the view. Her shoes were kicked off, feet up, sunglasses too expensive for someone who forgot her half of the grocery bill 3 weeks in a row. I was done doubting myself, done second-guessing. My instincts had never failed me. They'd just been buried beneath years of maternal guilt and hope. Hope that Nathan would come around. Hope that the boy I raised was still somewhere under the smugness and entitlement. Hope that I wasn't just a stepping stone being used until it crumbled. But the truth was louder now. He wasn't just drifting, he was plotting. And he was doing it right under my roof, with someone who smiled in my face and whispered about me behind closed doors. So I began my own whispers, quiet movements, unseen hands. I started taking photos of documents left on counters, of my prescription bottles that somehow had fewer pills than I remembered. I counted them, twice a day, and kept the numbers in a notebook no one knew existed. I checked my credit. I checked property records. I checked passwords. And then I checked the locks, not just on my doors, on my life. I realized I didn't know when Nathan had last called me Mom without it being followed by a request. I couldn't remember the last time he'd said thank you, or looked at me like I was a person, not a meal ticket, not a roommate to be phased out. I sat in my room, the door locked for the first time in years, listening to him laugh in the kitchen with Brielle. My laughter was gone, my voice was gone. But what they didn't know, what they never considered, was that while they were laughing, I was writing down everything. I was building something in the dark. Not a plan for revenge, a record of betrayal. And soon, that record would speak louder than their gossip, louder than their mockery. Soon, they'd understand. The old woman wasn't disappearing. She was documenting. And when the moment came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be legal. It was 4:14 p.m. music thudded through the walls. Someone had switched the playlist to some half-drunken hip-hop throb, like the beat itself was a warning I could understand better than they ever would. I moved silently down the hallway, every step measured, steady. I didn't need to rush. I already knew where I was going. The study. Nathan had told me months ago that the drawer on the left side of the desk was just old paperwork and not worth digging through. When I'd tried once before to open it, I found it locked. Cheap lock. Office grade. Insulting, really. I went to the kitchen drawer, pulled out the small tin where Harold used to keep miscellaneous screws, washers, and emergency keys. The spare desk key was still taped to the bottom, because unlike my son, my husband never believed in hiding things in plain sight. I clicked open the drawer in one smooth motion, and what I found should have shocked me, but it didn't. Not anymore. A lease agreement sat right on top. Fresh, laser printed. It was for this house. My house. And in the tenant's signature line, Nathan's scribble. In the landlord section, my name, but not my signature. I stared at the forged scrawl, pretending to be me. It was pitiful. The loops were wrong. The slant too dramatic. Nathan had never taken the time to learn how I signed my name. He probably thought it wouldn't matter. He probably assumed no one would check. Stapled to the back was a utility bill with his name, a printout of a Wi-Fi confirmation with his email. He was trying to create a paper trail, as if he could erase me with enough documentation. As if I hadn't paid for every square inch of this house with my husband's life insurance and my own sacrifices. I kept going. A folder labeled Plans revealed the rest. Budget spreadsheets, cost estimates for home renovations, Airbnb profitability charts, Airbnb. I let out a small, bitter breath. He wasn't trying to live here. He was trying to cash in. There was even a printed conversation with Brielle. Nathan, once she's out, I'm thinking studio in the master. Could rent it for $150 per night easy. Brielle, baby, I want you to have your space. You deserve it. Nathan, she's already slipping. Lost track of her meds last week. Almost gave me a reason to step in. I froze. Lost track of my meds? I reached for the folder in my other hand, the one I'd already filled with 2 empty prescription bottles I'd found in the trash earlier that day. Bottles I didn't finish. Someone had been stealing them. And now I knew why. He wasn't just forging documents. He was laying a case, trying to build a version of reality where I looked unstable, forgetful, vulnerable, evictable. I didn't know whether to scream or laugh. I did neither. I calmly slid the bottles next to the lease in the evidence folder. Then I opened the bottom drawer and found something I hadn't expected. My marriage certificate, my original birth certificate, and a manila envelope with my name on it, handwritten. I opened it and found a printout of a power of attorney document, blank, unfiled, but ready. He was going to make me disappear on paper before trying to erase me in person. It was all right there. The plan, the execution, the arrogance. I stood, folder in hand, lockbox under my arm, and I walked back toward the front of the house like nothing had happened. Like the last 10 minutes hadn't just confirmed everything, I picked up the phone and dialed. Not 911. This wasn't an emergency. Not yet. Non-emergency police line. How may I assist you? My name is Maureen Carter, I said calmly. I need to report suspected identity theft, possibly ongoing fraud. The voice on the other end grew more serious. Who's the suspect? My son, Nathan Carter. He lives with me. I believe he's used my name on financial and property documents without my consent. I have evidence. A pause. Then, Would you like an officer to come by? Yes, I said. Can they be here in about 45 minutes? That should be possible. Is there a reason for the specific timing? There's a party here right now. He won't see them coming. I need the officers to walk in like guests. I could almost hear the nod through the phone. We'll dispatch 2 officers at 4:50. Make it 4:55, I said. He'll still be smiling by then. I hung up and folded the deed back into the box. Then, I picked up the empty bank envelope from earlier, the one with both our names on it, and slid it into a folder with my prescriptions. 3 months' worth of refills, suddenly emptied early, taken from a woman who didn't matter. Because why would she notice? It was 4:32 p.m. The folder in my hands felt heavier now, not because of the paper, but because of the story it told, and it wasn't finished. Not yet. I slipped into Nathan's bedroom, quiet as memory. The bed was unmade, socks on the floor, drawers half open. He lived like he thought someone else would clean up the consequences. I moved to his desk. Nothing locked. That was his flaw. Overconfidence. The kind that grows when you've never faced a real consequence in your life. A spiral notebook sat open, pages folded over. I almost didn't look twice until I saw my name. Mom. June 18th. Forgot she already made coffee. Made a second pot. Seemed confused. June 22nd, left burner on. Smoke alarm went off. Note. Mentioned to Brielle. June 27th. Accused me of misplacing mail. She threw it out herself. July 2nd. Told me same story twice in one day. Long pause mid-sentence. My stomach turned. A fake log. Handwritten. Manufactured moments designed to paint me as declining. Slipping. Unsafe. He was writing me into fiction. I flipped the page. The title at the top read, Conservatorship Path Timeline Options. If she slips again in front of Brielle, right pointing arrow, start the talk. Ask about doctor's eval late July. Mention memory concerns to neighbor casually. Call elder law firm for guidance if no progress by August goal. Soft landing, right pointing arrow. Power of attorney, right pointing arrow. Transition her out by fall. I had to sit down. He wasn't just waiting for me to fade. He was engineering my disappearance. The missed keys. The moved perfume bottle. The open bedroom door. That wasn't forgetfulness. That was staging. Psychological sabotage. Little shifts to make me second-guess myself and make it easier to prove I was unfit. And Brielle was part of it. The same woman who smiled at my cake, kissed my cheek, and made jokes about thrift store shoes when she thought I couldn't hear. I opened the drawer next to his bed, and that's when I saw it. My pill box. Not empty, reorganized. Monday's pills in Thursday's slot. Vitamin D swapped with an old blood pressure med I no longer took. The whole box tampered with. Just enough to confuse someone. Or make them look confused. It was chilling. Intimate. Like someone had been inside my mind, rearranging the furniture. There was a printout under the pillbox. An email confirmation from a website I'd never visited. Subject, Care Assessment Appointment Request. Confirmed Maureen Carter. Age 67 requested by Nathan Carter. Son, cohabitant. Inquiry reason. Noticing cognitive changes. Possible dementia onset. Seeking placement advice. Placement, he was trying to place me. Into a home. Into a diagnosis. Into silence. And what was I doing? Baking him a birthday cake. I placed everything carefully in my folder. Logbook, email, the tampered pillbox, and walked out of the room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I smiled. Because now it was all in my hands. He had spent months building a case against me, faking stories, telling others I was slipping. But what Nathan didn't realize, what boys like him never realize, is that the minute you try to rewrite a woman's story, you make her the author. And I was writing my ending now. I returned to the kitchen without rushing. There was nothing left to uncover, nothing more to doubt. The folder under my arm held every thread of his betrayal. And still, there sat the cake, untouched, perfect, mocking. I walked over and stared at it. I had piped, "Happy birthday, Nathan," across the top in gold frosting this morning, humming quietly to myself. I remember thinking, he may be distant lately, but he's still my son. He'll feel that. And now I knew exactly what he felt. Greed, entitlement, contempt. But not love. Never that. I reached for the candles, 28 gold tapers, and one by one, I plucked them out of the soft ganache. They made tiny holes as they left, leaving the surface imperfect. I didn't smooth them over. Let it show. I cut a clean slice. Just one. The kind I would have served him first. The corner piece with the piped star I always made special. But I served it to myself. I sat at the table, alone. No plates set, no party streamers. Just me and the ticking clock, and the final lie of the day. This beautiful, stupid cake. Outside, his laughter rang out again. Loud, careless, sharp as broken glass. I looked through the window and saw him leaning back in my patio chair, beer in hand, talking animatedly to a girl in a red dress I didn't recognize. Brielle was nowhere in sight. It struck me how at ease he looked, like nothing in the world could touch him, like he'd already won. He had no idea that his party, the music, the beer, the flirting, the false sense of security, was being hosted by a woman who had just dug her own son's grave in a manila folder. And he had no clue that the police were already on their way. I chewed slowly, not out of nervousness. There was nothing left to panic over. I had made my calls, collected my evidence. I'd even taken photos of everything, sent copies to my lawyer with a time-stamped email. The gears were already turning. He could have taken my kindness and built a life. Instead, he took my kindness and tried to bury me under it. He mistook my aging for weakness, my silence for surrender, my presence for permission. And now I was eating cake in the house he tried to steal, waiting for the moment the front door would open, and it would all come crashing down. I looked again at the cake, half frosted from where I'd pulled out the candles. I thought about lighting just one of them, just to watch something burn. But no, that wasn't how I wanted this to end. I wiped my fingers on a napkin, stood up, and placed the slices plate gently in the sink. I left the rest of the cake untouched. Let them eat it, if they dared. I stood just behind the kitchen curtain, half shadowed in the light, when I saw it. Nathan, leaning against the fence, beer in one hand, my car keys dangling from the other. The same keys I hadn't seen in 2 days, the ones I'd torn the house apart looking for, before convincing myself I'd simply misplaced them. But I hadn't. He had taken them. He was twirling them on his index finger like a toy, like they weren't the only working set I had, like he hadn't stolen them and lied to my face when I asked, and then he said it, loud enough for the whole backyard to hear. "Just take it for a spin, man. She'll never know. I'll cover for you if she freaks out." He tossed the keys to a boy I didn't recognize. College-aged, backwards hat, reeking of beer and borrowed confidence. The kid caught them, grinned, and walked toward my driveway like it was a carnival ride. My car, registered in my name, covered by my insurance, stolen under the soft pretense of familial sharing. And that's when I saw it clearly. This wasn't some petty, chaotic young man flailing to find his way. This was calculated entitlement. He believed, without hesitation, that nothing I owned truly belonged to me anymore. Not the house, not the bank account, not the car, not even the memories of the woman he once called Mom. He was distributing pieces of my life like party favors. And the crowd? They were laughing. Not one of them paused to ask, "Wait, is that your mom's car?" Not one questioned how Nathan could offer something he didn't own, because he had already rewritten the story. In their eyes, I wasn't a homeowner, a mother, a person. I was just the old woman who wandered in and out of the kitchen with snacks, the woman who'd be moving out soon. They didn't see the owner of the house watching them from behind the curtain. They didn't know the police were 15 minutes away. I stepped away from the window and took a breath. He'd given them my keys. What else had he handed out? Passwords? Mail? Pieces of me that were never his to give? I walked back into the living room and picked up my folder. I slid in one more note. Car keys taken. Offered to intoxicated guest. Vehicle still registered to me. I snapped a photo of the boy approaching the driver's side and attached it to the email draft I'd started for my lawyer. Time-stamped. Labeled. Clear. Because while Nathan played king in a sandbox, I was collecting evidence with the precision of a prosecutor. 4:47 p.m. The music had shifted. louder now. Someone had brought out a Bluetooth speaker. I could hear the bass vibrating through the floorboards. Laughter spilled into the house like oil, slick, messy, staining everything it touched. And still Nathan laughed. Still he smiled. Still he believed I'd just take it. He didn't know that the keys he'd stolen weren't just for my car. They were the key to exposing him for exactly what he was. Not just reckless, not just arrogant, but criminally stupid. He thought he was untouchable, but he was standing in the middle of a house built on lies, and the foundation was starting to crack. I stood at the hallway table, gathering the last of the evidence, email printouts, prescription logs, the fake journal, when I heard a faint ding. A phone, not mine. Nathan's phone had been left charging on the console table, right by the door. Careless, arrogant, vulnerable. I shouldn't have looked. But he had forfeited privacy the moment he tried to erase my name from the life I gave him. The screen lit up again. Brielle, I told you she's not as clueless as she acts. You need to move fast. My thumb hovered. One swipe, just one. Unlocked. And there it was, the entire thread. Every plan, every lie, every smug little message. Nathan, once she's out, we'll Airbnb the place. You can decorate the master, studio vibes. I'll finally have space to breathe. Brielle, LOL, imagine how much we'll make in summer. I can help with the listing. Should I take new pics tomorrow while she's at her appointment? Nathan, yes. Also, I moved her pillbox again. She said something about it being off. That's the third time. Think it's working. Brielle, babe, she's one weird episode away from a care facility. Nathan, good. Let them place her. I'll sign the form if she's too out of it to object. My fingers clenched around the phone. They weren't waiting for me to slip. They were engineering it, rehearsing it. Every word in that thread was another nail in the coffin they were building with smiles and whispers. Nathan, this is the last year we celebrate her birthday here. Next year, it's us, our life. He was talking about my birthday, the one I'd spent alone last month, in this very house. After he forgot, after she said they had plans, I had sat with leftover stew and watched the rain streak down the kitchen window while they posted selfies from a winery 2 counties over. And now, he was calling it the last one. Because next year, I wouldn't be here, not by accident, by design. I forwarded the message thread to my own email, snapping a screenshot before the phone dimmed. Then I set it back exactly how I found it. My hands didn't tremble. I felt nothing. No sorrow, no ache, not even rage, just clarity. This was no longer about a house. It wasn't even about being betrayed. It was about survival. He hadn't tried to hurt me in the heat of anger. He wasn't lashing out in grief or stress. This wasn't temporary. He had tried to erase me with intention, with help, and with pleasure. Then I picked up the phone and dialed the officer I'd spoken to earlier. He answered on the second ring. Maureen Carter? Yes. They're still here, I said calmly. The music's loud. They won't hear you knock unless you come straight to the front door. Understood. Are you still pressing charges? I looked at the folder beside me, thick now with proof. The forged lease, the fake symptom journal, the tampered pillbox, the Airbnb texts. My name, my future, my dignity, all stolen and repackaged by a man I once carried in my arms. Yes, I said. You'll find forged documents in his nightstand. The identity theft is real. The medical abuse is real. I've documented it all. There was a pause. I could hear the officer exhale. Not in disbelief, but in recognition. We're 5 minutes out. We'll approach as quietly as we can. I hung up without another word. No pleasantries, no emotion. This wasn't the time for tears. It was the time for consequences. 4:55 p.m. The timing had to be perfect. I slipped out the front door and looped around the side yard, letting the laughter guide me like a compass. The party was still in full swing. Cheap beer, loud music, and plastic chairs sagging under people who would never remember this birthday for the cake. I stood just behind the hedges for a moment, watching. Nathan was holding court like a king of concrete and lies. His sunglasses were perched on his head now, shirt half buttoned, leaning into Brielle as if he hadn't signed away every ounce of trust I'd ever given him. I smoothed my blouse and stepped onto the patio like a guest arriving fashionably late. A few heads turned. Most didn't. I wasn't part of the celebration anymore. I was the wallpaper, the maid, the placeholder until the real fun could begin. Nathan's eyes met mine, and for a split second, I saw something flicker. Not guilt, never guilt, but a twitch of annoyance, like I'd ruined the rhythm. I smiled anyway. Wide, warm, controlled. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, just loud enough. He didn't answer at first, just glanced at Brielle, who smirked and took a long sip from her red cup. I took a step closer, folding my hands neatly in front of me. "I overheard what you said earlier," I continued, voice light, "about the best gift being if I disappeared." That made him pause. The smirk faltered. "Oh, come on," he muttered, forcing a laugh. "Don't be so dramatic, Mom. It was a joke." Brielle giggled beside him, leaning in like this was some cute misunderstanding. "You know he didn't mean it like that," she cooed. I tilted my head slightly. Of course. I just wanted to thank you for the clarity." He blinked. "What?" "I'll be out of your life," I said, with the same tone I once used to offer cookies and milk. "Just like you wanted." The silence was instant. Delicious. A couple guests looked up from their phones. One girl stopped mid-bite. The boy Nathan had given my car keys to was back in the yard now, tossing them lazily between his hands, his face suddenly pale. Nathan narrowed his eyes. "Wait, what are you talking about?" I smiled again, this time smaller, sharper. "Just that you were right. I don't belong here anymore. You need the space, and I need to move on. It's time." He opened his mouth, then closed it. No one said a word, not even Brielle, who suddenly couldn't seem to find anything clever to say. I turned without waiting for a reply, walked across the patio, stepped back into the house, and locked the door behind me. I stood there for a moment, hand still on the knob, pulse steady. That was the moment I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was done. Done being the rug they wiped their plans on. Done being the woman they smiled at while plotting her removal. I had given him the illusion of victory, handed it to him like a wrapped present, let him taste it for exactly 2 minutes, because in 2 more, the knock would come, and the only person disappearing today wasn't me. 4:59 p.m. I stood in the darkened hallway just beyond the kitchen. The house was still, except for the throb of bass outside and the low hum of voices. They thought I had gone back to sulk, or maybe to pack. Maybe Brielle thought I was off crying somewhere, swallowing my dignity like cold soup. But I wasn't. I was waiting. One candle flickered on the kitchen table. The half-eaten cake sat untouched, a single slice missing. Mine. My goodbye had already been said. The real show was about to begin. 5 p.m., right on cue, red and blue lights poured through the lace curtains, slicing across the kitchen floor like judgment. The music cut off abruptly. I heard someone yell, "Whoa, what the hell?" Then the knock. 3 sharp raps on the front door, firm, official. I didn't move. From the living room, I heard footsteps, heavy ones, the kind of walk people adopt when they still think they can talk their way out of anything. Then Nathan's voice, cocky and casual. "Yeah? What's the problem, officer?" Then came the words that changed everything. "Nathan Carter? You're under arrest for attempted fraud and identity theft." The silence that followed was instant and brutal, like someone had punched the party in the lungs. I stepped slowly into view. Through the crack in the hallway, I saw them, the officers in full uniform, standing at the threshold with purpose. Nathan's smile faltered. Wait, what? This is my birthday?" The first officer didn't flinch. "And you're going to need a lawyer." Gasps rippled across the yard. Someone dropped a drink. Brielle stepped back like she'd just realized she was standing in wet cement. Nathan looked around for help, for allies. "Mom? Mom, what is this?" I stepped fully into the living room now, folder in hand, expression unreadable. I told you I'd be gone, I said quietly. Turns out it's you who'll be leaving instead. He took a step toward me, face pale, mouth open. You called the cops on your own son? No, I said, my voice low and measured. I called them on a man who forged my signature, stole my prescriptions, lied about my mental health, and tried to steal my house. The officer stepped between us as Nathan reached out again. Hands behind your back, sir. The cuffs clicked shut. The same hands that had once clung to my finger as a baby now pulled helplessly against cold steel. I didn't do anything? This is insane, he shouted, twisting, panic rising now like smoke from a fire he swore he didn't start. I handed the officer my folder. There are text messages, a fake care appointment, forged lease documents, altered pill bottles, and logs he made about my so-called confusion. I've sent it all to my attorney. Brielle looked like she wanted to melt into the grass. One of the guests backed away toward the sidewalk, whispering urgently into his phone. Nathan turned once more, desperate. You're ruining my life, I met his eyes. No, Nathan, I'm saving mine. They walked him out in full view of everyone, cuffed, small, defeated. He didn't look like a man anymore. He looked like a scared boy who had finally run out of lies. The sirens quieted, but the shame remained, burning in the cracks of his carefully constructed world. The cruiser backed out of the driveway slowly, the gravel crunching beneath it like bones. I watched it go until it vanished around the corner, taking everything I'd built my life around with it. And I didn't cry. A few partygoers slipped away without saying goodbye. No one made eye contact. Someone coughed. Another muttered something about needing to check on the dog. The backyard emptied like a funeral no one meant to attend. I stepped back inside and closed the door behind me, locked it, deadbolt, chain. Then I exhaled. It was the first full breath I'd taken in months. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and let me know which city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check out my other videos.